Now, welcome to another Star Wars discussion, which means I'm basically just going to be taking a question or comment or topic from someone in the audience and, well, discussing it. And there's no sort of script or anything with these videos, which means I'm prone to get off topic and to ramble from time to time. So hopefully you enjoy the little tangents I take you on. But anyway, this time the question comes to us from Commander Sammer, who asked, why are the prequels so adored despite their flaws? And I think this is an interesting question because it probably right away invokes three different possible responses. You're going to have some people who absolutely agree with this statement and say, yeah, I do love the prequels even though they are flawed films. But then you're going to have people who, of course, say, I hate the prequels because they are flawed films. And then you'll have people who say, what flaws? The prequels are fine and perfect as is, and I love them as is. Why do people always say they are flawed movies? And not to in any way attack those people, but there is a huge difference between objective quality and subjective enjoyment. And I really don't want to get into a debate over the two. It should be pretty self-explanatory. I mean, just because you really, really like something, and mind you, I really, really like the Star Wars prequel trilogy. I'm a huge fan of it. But just because you really like something doesn't mean it is good. It also doesn't mean it's bad if you don't like something. We have this really strange thing in society today where people want their opinions to be fact in the worst possible way. And they will ceaselessly attack you if you do not agree with their opinions. I experienced this firsthand with the Star Wars sequel trilogy, where I had some sequel fans, and mind you, not all of them. Another problem is we tend to generalize. Just because one person in a group does something doesn't mean the whole group feels that way. But I certainly had plenty of sequel fans who attacked me for giving my thoughts and opinions and some of my attempted objective criticism of the films. They attacked me and told me I cannot be a Star Wars fan if I do not like these films, or that I am a horrible person because I must be secretly hating these films for this reason or that reason. And as I've said a million times before, I don't care if you like the sequel trilogy, and I don't mean that in any kind of mean-spirited way. It's great if you enjoy the films. I'm glad people got enjoyment out of them. I personally did not. And when the shoe is on the other foot, again, as someone who really enjoyed the prequel trilogy despite its flaws, I've had plenty of people tell me, oh, how can you like those movies? They're horrible, and they'll objectively give this reason and that reason. And, I can actually nod my head and say, yeah, objectively, you're right. There are problems with maybe the acting, or the story isn't presented as well as it could have been presented, we'll say. There are problems with the film, but guess what? Subjectively, I still got enjoyment out of it. And one of the main reasons for that is the story, which again, maybe wasn't told as well as it could have been. That is the one thing I kind of lament when it comes to the prequels. I think there is a fantastic story there. There is a beautiful theme about giving away your freedom for the name of security, which can very much relate to the world at that time and to the world today, and probably the world 50 years from now or 100 years from now. That's why I don't mind the politics of the prequels. They are not, time-based. They are universal. They will apply 100 years from now. And so I like that story. I think there is a message there, and it is done in a package that to me is beautiful. I love the imagery of the prequels. The world building of the prequels is phenomenal. I love the score of the prequels. It might even be better than the original trilogy score. I love the lightsaber battles. Now you could say, they're over the top and all that, but Star Wars is supposed to be a little campy. It's supposed to be fun. I'm okay with it being a little over the top when it comes to, lightsaber battles and all that. I'm also okay with the dialogue not being the greatest all the time. Though that said, I do think the dialogue in Episode 2 in particular between Padme and Anakin should have been better. I think one of the biggest flaws of the prequels, one of the other things that really bugs me, is that the love story between Anakin and Padme, which is the core of, everything. It's pretty much the core of the entire trilogy, that it could have been handled better, that we could have been made to feel like these two were really and truly falling in love, not just saying they were really and truly falling in love. In other words, yes, I can objectively agree that there are issues with the prequel trilogy, yet at the same time, I can subjectively say that I enjoyed them despite those issues. I can both acknowledge and criticize, yet still enjoy at the same time, which is another thing people seem to really not understand from time to time. I will oftentimes do reviews, and in my reviews I will say, I don't usually gush over things because I want to give my full and complete view. I like to analyze, I like to dissect and pick things apart. And even when I really, really enjoy something, I usually tend to still find issues. And, I will do reviews of Mandalorian, for example, where I have loved the episode, and I've pointed out maybe one little thing that could have been better, and people will jump on that one little thing and say, how could you let that bother you? It didn't bother me. I'm just pointing out something that I think was not the best, something that could have been better, but I can still get enjoyment out of it. And that goes for the prequels as well, even though there are probably more little issues I can point out than in some of the better episodes of The Mandalorian, I should say. Another thing I really enjoyed, or maybe I should say appreciated about the prequels, and I think other people do as well, is that they are basically 100% George Lucas's vision. They are his story, that he got to tell the story exactly how he wanted to tell it, with little to no outside influences. And we can certainly debate whether or not some outside influences, especially maybe in the structure of the story and maybe, again, things like the dialogue, that maybe some outside help would have been a good thing, that trying to make this entire movie with you being the only word is not the best thing for the movie itself. But my point is, when you compare this to something like the sequel trilogy, when you compare the prequels to the sequel trilogy, I would say the biggest difference is the prequels were one man's story, whereas the sequels were engineered by a large corporation. And basically what I mean by that is the sequels were corporate minds overseeing creative minds, and they were trying to work together to, kind of create this perfect trilogy that would appeal to the most possible people and that would make as much money as possible and would create all this merchandise that they could profit from till the end of time. And we all know they didn't exactly pull that off because they didn't have a plan for the story. But that wasn't what it was about. It was never about the story. It was about how do we make these 3 films so that people will go to them and love all this merchandise. And they kind of forgot that what makes people love the movies is usually the story itself, which again is why a lot of people really enjoyed the prequels. They really enjoy that underlying story, though maybe not a perfectly told story. They really enjoy that there is a focus, that there is a plan in place, that there was one man's vision, not again a corporately created monstrosity where different people came in with different ideas and just took the story in different directions, and we ended up with something that makes no sense in the end. And yes, I know there are also plenty of people who did not like the story of the prequels at the same time, who did not like what Lucas did with Star Wars, and will say that he ruined Star Wars. And we know that Lucas wasn't exactly making the movies for the fans. And I know I say all the time when it comes to Disney that they do need to pay attention to the fans, that they are their customers and they have to cater to them to some extent at least. And of course, I kind of sound contradictory because I am kind of praising Lucas for doing his own thing with Star Wars. But the big difference is Star Wars was his. He created it. He could do whatever he wanted with it. And if he tanked the franchise and lost all his fan base, well, that was basically his prerogative. Whereas Disney, we know, bought Star Wars to make money off of it. We know that. We know that they did not spend $4 billion just because they really liked Star Wars and wanted to tell some Star Wars stories. No, what they spent $4 billion on was this guaranteed revenue stream that they call Star Wars fans. That's basically what the $4 billion was for. It was for those fans that they knew they could milk for money. Now, I've said it before, I don't mind if they want to make money off of Star Wars as long as they give fans what they want. Which, again, that is different from the Lucas perspective. I'm not saying Lucas didn't care about the money. I'm sure he enjoyed the billions of dollars he had made off of Star Wars in his lifetime. But I never got the impression that it was only about the money with him. Because if it was, we would have gotten a lot more Star Wars films than just the 6 he gave us, or 7 if you want to include the Clone Wars movie. He could have just kept cranking them out. He could have just done what Disney did. He could have made it a assembly line of Star Wars where he brought in all different types of talent to make different shows and movies and all these other things. And yes, Lucas did have the expanded universe where books and comics were made, but I don't think that was a huge revenue stream for Lucas or for Lucasfilm. I always appreciated the fact that he let others give us more Star Wars than he himself could ever give us. And most, if not almost all, of the writers or authors from the expanded universe, from the comics and books, really were truly passionate Star Wars fans. I'm sure they enjoyed the money they got off the sales of their books and comics as well, but you really felt like they loved what they were doing. And that's what I think people want out of, the current new canon. They want people who are making these films and doing these projects or these series who really love what they're doing, which is why Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau get so much support. because you really feel like they love what they're doing. But anyway, as kind of predicted at the start, I am getting off topic. I am going on little tangents. So I will wrap this up by saying that the reason why I think the Star Wars prequel trilogy is so beloved by many fans is because it is actually a really great story. It's maybe not told as well as it could have been, but it's a great story and one that is universal. As I said, you can watch these movies 100 years from now and get the same message out of them that we got 20 years ago when they first came out. And I think, again, there are things, you could call them more frivolous, that they're not as important to the actual movies as maybe the story being told well. But there are other things like the world building, which opened up other stories to be told elsewhere. The lightsaber battles, the space battles. Just, there are so many really enjoyable things about the films themselves that, have made people love them. And that's okay. They don't have to be perfect films for people to enjoy them. And, a perfect film doesn't necessarily have to be enjoyed by somebody at the same time. Again, it is a subjective versus objective. Do you feel something when you watch the movies? Do you enjoy them? And I think when it comes to the Star Wars prequels trilogy, I think a lot of people watch them and enjoy them for what they are, and it's as simple as that. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. If you enjoyed this ramble and you want to see more videos like this one, well, let me know in the comments below. You can also respond to my pinned comment down there and give me a suggestion for another topic, whether that be a question or just something you'd like to see me discuss, whatever it might be. And it can be Star Wars related, or it can be, on the fringe of Star Wars related. It could be more entertainment related. Whatever it is, leave that comment below and tell me what you want to see me discuss, or tell me you don't like these videos and to go back to my scripted form because you ramble too much. Whatever the case may be, leave that comment below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.